All right, joining us on today's show is someone who took pro wrestling by storm. He was a mainstay during the legendary WWF Attitude Era. He's a former WWF Tag Team and Hardcore Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Thrasher, Mr. Glenn Ruth. Glenn, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's doing all right. You forgot one thing, NWA Tag Team Champ.
NWA Tag Team Champion, of course.
That's right. I got to get all the accolades I can get.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Many fans know about your wrestling career, but wrestling wasn't the first sport you excelled in. Can you tell us a little bit about your football career briefly?
Well, when I was younger, I played, like my local town had a Pop Warner, I guess they called it midget football or Pee-wee football, whatever they called it. And I was like 7 years old, and I played high school or football all throughout past high school and stuff like that. And was selected on the All-State team and All-American team, all that stuff, and had letters from colleges to go, and I opted out and didn't do it. I was quite, I guess, football player back then.
Sure. Now, do you wish you had stuck with football instead of pursuing pro wrestling?
I wish I would have, probably tried to go to college. I wish I would have attempted to go farther with it. I was very hard-headed when I was younger, so I wasn't into school per se. I just wanted to, I went to school to play sports. That's what I went to school for. When I was in the beginning of school, I played, football, and then during the winter I wrestled. And then, I guess during the off time from wrestling, or after wrestling was over, I hardly ever attended school then. So, yeah, I went to school to play sports. So, I just wasn't much into the whole academics and stuff like that. And, I wish I would have at least tried it.
Sure. Now, fast forward a little bit. You started training at the Monster Factory. Was training for pro wrestling what you expected, or was it tougher than you originally thought?
It was so. The ironic thing about that is I was never really a wrestling fan, so I didn't know. I mean, I watched it every so often on cable TV when they were over at the Philadelphia Spectrum way back when. And I watched it occasionally, but I never really thought I was going to pursue it as a career. Mm-hmm. And then once I left high school and I wasn't having that physical contact and that aggression release or anything else like that, I was kind of missing that in my life. So instead of, being my mom or, girlfriends at the time or anything else like that, I decided it would be a safer bet to go try this thing called the pro wrestling stage and stuff like that. Mm. So I mean, it was the thing that was the hardest was falling. I mean, because what's your first instinct when you're falling backwards?
Yeah,
to put your arms down.
Yep. You
don't want to do that in pro wrestling because you'll break your arms. Mm. So yeah, I mean, just trying to break the mold of, oh my God, I'm falling. Let me catch myself. To holy crap, let me just make sure I tuck my chin and don't bang my head on the mat and knock myself out.
Yeah. Now, was there one important thing maybe that you took away from the Monster Factory that you learned there?
Everything. I mean, if it wasn't for that school and the teachings there and Larry Sharp and, meeting the right people and stuff like that through him, I would have never, I would have never been able to do what I did. I mean, he let me, once I got up and I was, through my training, because he let me kind of take the guys under my wing, and I was his head trainer at the time. Mm-hmm. And that's how I met Chaz. So, he kind of paved the way for me for a lot of things. So, without the Monster Factory, I wouldn't have been anywhere that I was there.
Sure. Now, yeah. Now, you toured the world spending time wrestling in Japan and various territories across the United States. What were some of the biggest differences maybe between your time in Japan and wrestling here in the U.S.?
Wow. Japan was so weird because I knew nothing about Japan. I was in the business maybe 6 to 8 months before I went over to Japan for the very first time. Mm-hmm. and I was greener than the grass is. And it was such a shock it was my first time ever out of the country or anything else like that. So it was just really, it was bizarre because, I've seen the fans in the States and how they react and stuff like that. And it wasn't like that over there. I mean, they react to, pinfalls and, stuff like that. And they don't really, they're not sitting there yelling at you the whole time or anything else like that. It was just the crowds were different.
Sure. All right.
And, the psychology over there, I mean, it's a little bit more intense over there than it is here because back then you couldn't really do the ha-ha stuff or, the Joey Ryan dick throw or whatever the hell he did and stuff like that. So, it wasn't really like that over there back then.
Sure.
I mean, you had people like Abdullah the Butcher and Stan Hansen that the little Japanese people would just scatter if they looked at him. I remember one time we were leaving one of the buildings and, Stan Hansen comes out and he has his cowbell in his hand and everything else and his rope and he's swinging it over his head and everything else. And he just, he could separate people just by looking at them, and they would just look back at him and just run. It was the same thing with Abdullah the Butcher, and it was just nuts. The amount of respect I want to say that the fans had over in Japan is far different than the respect that's over here in the States.
Sure. Now, speaking of territories that you worked for, USWA, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, before going to the WWF, do you think that territories made you more rounded as a performer?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, it didn't matter then how much you were getting paid or anything else like that. You were in the ring 5-6 nights a week, honing your character, honing your skills, wrestling different people, just different things that happened in the ring, how to react to them and stuff like that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Between Smoky Mountain and USWA, absolutely. I mean, we became the headbangers in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Jim Cornette actually gave us the headbanger name.
Oh.
So, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, what's different nowadays. There is no territories like that.
Sure. Now, speaking of the Headbangers, you and Chaz were brought into WWF. At that time, was Vince or anybody excited about the Headbangers, or was there any other ideas being thrown about for you guys?
Well, it was weird because when we came into WWF, we were under Jim Cornette was closing down Smoky Mountain. He couldn't spend the time at Smoky Mountain because he was more doing full time with WWF. So he went to Vince and he said, listen, I got lots of guys that I would like to try to get in here and everything else. So Vince came up with a part-time contract. And what the part-time contract consists of were guys that just came in and did TVs. Monday, Tuesday, every single week. That's all you did was Monday, Tuesday TVs. So, and then he wanted to get away from the whole squash matches where the superstars went out became superstars. He wanted the more competitive back and forth, and then the superstar. So he wanted more competitive matches. Mm-hmm. So we went in for our tryout, and it was so funny because it was Vince and Shane are up at the gorilla position, and everybody's up there, Pat Patterson and Gorilla Monsoon, and everybody's up there. And, Shane looks at us, he goes, oh my God, you guys are wearing Marilyn Manson shirts. I love that guy. So yeah, Shane McMahon was a huge Marilyn Manson. I don't know if he was a huge Marilyn Manson. He was a Manson fan. He had his autobiography book in his office and stuff like that. So I think they were more, impressed with how we were ring-wise, because we went in there and one of the first matches we had were with Doug Furness and Phil LaFong. Mm-hmm. And they came fresh over from Japan, and they were known for their speed in the ring, and they're back and forth in spots after spot. And we went in there and we hung right with them and everything else. And here's these two kids that nobody's really heard of, and are, hanging in there with two of the greats from Japan and everything else. So I guess it was an eye opener, and that pretty much gave us our mark.
Great.
So,
yeah, sure. You guys enjoyed a lot of success. You guys enjoyed a lot of success during your time in the WWF. You also got to be a part of one of the most infamous eras in wrestling as well. What are some of your favorite parts about wrestling during the Attitude Era?
Just the competition. Mm-hmm. The thing that made the Attitude Era great, and even the WCW era great, was because they were trying to beat us and we were trying to beat them. Mm-hmm. Why do you like Pepsi? Because you don't like Coke. Mm-hmm. Why'd you like WCW? Because you didn't like Vince in the WWF. Mm-hmm. Vice versa.
Sure.
So it was just that constant competition, and whenever you were on, you always wanted to make sure your segment or your time slot or your TV time was going to outrank or outdraw what WCW was doing. You wanted to make sure more fans were watching WWF at that time when you were on TV than they were watching Nitro. So it was just that oh my God, we got to beat them this week. Oh, we came so close, but yeah, we're going to get them next week. Mm-hmm. It was that constant competition, and back then I felt like the locker room, everybody felt like a family. God willing, and I hope Bret Hart makes it through his latest bout he has, but I'm sure he will. He's one of the toughest people I know. Mm-hmm. With his cancer that he's actually having surgery today for.
Yeah, we wish him nothing but the best.
So, everybody knew where their position was in the company. Everybody knew, who the main event was. It was Taker, it was Steve, it was Shawn, it was Brad. It was, they were the main event guys. That's who the people were coming to see. And then they were also glad to see the rest of us. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we all knew the pecking order and everything else. And I just felt like back then the locker room wasn't so cutthroat or out to get each other or anything else. From what I hear, it's like now. Not that I know or anything else, because I don't know.
Sure.
I haven't watched it on TV. I couldn't tell you who their champion was right now.
Yeah. All right. Now, speaking a little bit about locker rooms, we always hear about a crazy partying and that happened in the ECW locker room, but we have to assume that maybe something like that was going on during the Attitude Era. Are there any fun stories or anything that comes to your mind that that went on during your time in the WWF, or no? I
mean, we always had the of course, with Davey and Owen being in the locker room with you always had, those two pulling pranks on you with either dropping stink bombs when you're sitting there talking to Vince and, Vince is looking at you like you just, shit yourself. Or, you go in at the end of the night after Raw's over and you go to grab your wrestling bag and it's attached to a table because, Owen just padlocked your bag to the table. Oh. And then you got to show up the next day at SmackDown with this table and your bag. So, I mean, there was always stuff like that
Sure.
went on. Not so much partying-wise or anything else like that. I mean, guys respected it.
Sure.
I guess the locker room like that. Mm-hmm. Not saying anything bad about ECW because they were their own niche. I mean, sure, ECW, there'll never be another one like it. Mm-hmm. So,
of course.
It was a lot different. I guess for us, we didn't really have that kind of partying or anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been a couple times, I've heard Bradshaw, duct tape certain guys to tables. So, just for fun, just because.
All right, well,
so,
sure.
A couple times that you would hide Mark Henry's crutches when he had a broken leg and say Vince wanted to talk to him by the ring and have him start hopping all the way down the ring and then say, never mind, here's have him hop all the way. Yeah, I mean, just funny stuff like that, yeah.
Great, yeah. Now, fast forward a little bit more now, too. After leaving the WWF, you joined the ranks of the independent wrestling scene. Did you guys enjoy the freedom that you had performing during that time? Was it less hectic, the WWF?
It's funny because, I mean, the traveling and the schedule that you have to have with the WWE is, oh my God, it's ungodly. The amount of time that you're on the road versus the time that you're home and everything. You're home enough time to unload your bag, wash your clothes, and then repack and leave again on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
If you were on a card Friday night, you got in Wednesday, you had enough time to wash, maybe see the kids for a half a day, and then you were back on the plane again. So, I mean, the fact of doing the independence and stuff like that, it gives you a little bit more freedom. You can kind of pick and choose and stuff like that. I mean, we like doing them because we're giving back to the younger guys. I mean, I've always liked being able to, not saying that I'm have all this knowledge or anything else, but just being able to give them, different scenarios and
sure.
say, hey, back when I was doing this, or, I would do it this way. And,
mm-hmm.
Just passing on the knowledge and stuff like that to the younger guys and telling these kids, you know what, you might not want to do that moonsault missile for the top rope every single time you wrestle, because you should save that for a big time.
Yeah.
A big match, or, you won't be able to walk that much later.
Definitely.
So it's basically, doing the independence is almost like a constant training seminar kind of thing when you're with certain guys. So,
sure.
which we both enjoy.
Sure. Now, throughout your wrestling career, did you ever feel out of love with professional wrestling?
Probably when I initially left WWF,
mm-hmm.
I fell out of love with everything. I mean, I didn't go to the gym anymore. I didn't, nothing. I got into the restaurant business and stuff like that, and I ballooned up to 315 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I distanced myself so far from pro wrestling, people didn't even know that was me. And then, I just, it was like a wake-up call. I looked at myself one time, and I came down to Florida to see Chaz and everything else, and it was more of a wake-up call, and I didn't want to go out like that. I wanted to go out like my way and
sure.
and stuff like that. And I feel like what we're doing now and doing the independence here and there and stuff like that, and being able to go out, my way and the way we want to go out.
Sure, definitely. Now, have you guys heard anything about WWE re-registering the Headbangers Trademark? Because I think it's about time we see some more Headbangers action figures or even some video game cameos.
We have not heard anything like that. Actually, now we own the trademark on it and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I mean, I can't even get us on the alumni page, let alone on a video game or a classic action figure or anything else like that. But, I mean, I would love to. I would love to go up for an old-time Raw or just one last, walk to the ring or anything else for anything. I would absolutely love it.
I think we're going to have to start a grassroots movement now to get you guys up there now. I think all the fans out there are going to have to come together.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Now, Glenn, we know you're yep.
I would actually be interested to see how the fans today would react to us and how we are.
Definitely.
Lightning round.
Is there a tag team that you would like to work with that you've never worked with before?
Freebirds.
All right. Favorite football team?
Dallas Cowboys.
What are your interests outside of the pro wrestling world?
Going to Disney World.
Favorite musician?
Miley Cyrus.
And if
That's a joke.
If you had what was the greatest moment of your wrestling career? If you could narrow it by one moment.
WrestleMania 13 and winning the tag belts.
Now, Glenn, everybody out there, they're kind of in the social media universe. Is there a way fans can keep up with you today on social media?
Absolutely. They can reach me on Twitter at GR Thrasher, THRASHER. I do my best to follow everyone back and talk to everybody on social media, because if it wasn't for the fans and everybody out there, there wouldn't be pro wrestlers. There wouldn't be the Headbangers. There would be us. we had nobody to work for or in front of.
Awesome. Glenn, Thrasher, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate your time.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.